thanks, Gavin, for having me. I know JD. I haven't seen anybody else's names at all, but yeah. So the Monroe fire, I'll say really quickly, is we had a big rain on it today. There's a lot more humidity around and coming next week than I saw a few days ago. So it was like worst case scenario when we were looking at it on Saturday, and now we're looking at afternoon thunderstorms and humidities over 20%, which is what they really want. It's the number one fire in the nation, so they have all the resources that the number one fire gets, and so there's like 800 firefighters on this thing, so it's a big deal. And I feel like, yeah, worst case scenario is October, Gavin. But realistically, if we actually get moisture, they're making progress on a lot of the lines, and I'm hoping by the end of August. I know it's cutting it close for the wide open, but we'll
Cool.
know
That's
more
great.
after in the middle of next week how it's doing. But yeah, there are a lot of resources, and they're absolute pros. It's been quite impressive to watch them work.
Yeah, they're
So
amazing. Amazing teams.
yeah, so basically, if you can see my screen, the fire has burned. You guys have probably already seen it all, but it's basically like here's Monroe Peak. It's burned. It started here, and it's burned up to here, to here, to here, and it's burning down the Monroe Peak canyon right now. It's burning downhill right here now. They're worried about this like 2 mile stretch of dense forest that if it gets up here, like this whole plateau could go. They're also worried about it traveling west into Kusharam and coming down. But I really like they have lots of plans, and they have contingency plans. They have like four major plans they're always working on. So that's the update on the fire. I'm optimistic. We're going to be flying this week. We're going to fly out of Junction, which is a really cool zone. Originally, hang gliders found it, and you get up here and you can fly along the whole the Tusher Range north, and we'll be able to land around Marysvale. This is outside the TFR. We could land at Paiute Reservoir. So we are going to get to fly, and it's been a minute. In the afternoon, we've got a new site over here, which is super cool. It's west facing. It just takes about 2 hours to get to. So let's talk about Monroe just in general. Um, that like the flying arena. So we have Cove Launch in the big picture here. We have this Pavant mountain range. We have the Tusher mountain range, which is like 12,000-foot mountains. These are like 10,000-foot mountains, and there's a pass through here. And then there's also a saddle that comes. There's a saddle somewhere along through here that comes, and then there's another saddle somewhere through here that comes. But what we're figuring out now is this west wind off the desert in the afternoon meeting the North Valley wind. And we'll see this on the forecast. So I'll look at today and tomorrow and the next day, and we can see these convergence areas that set up with a wind out of the west or any wind that's just a little bit different than this North Valley flow. We get these areas of monster lift in the valley. So that's what we're thinking the actual glass off is, not just this katabatic flow pushing it all up, but these major convergence lines. So yeah, I use XC Skies, so it's a good way to illustrate like the different elements that I look at, and so I usually
And
take
Jonathan, are
the.
you mostly using HRR or are you looking at all of them?
I mean, I haven't gone searching for a model that actually like whenever I search for different models, I'm kind of like looking for the best thing, which isn't necessarily what's going to happen. I feel like the HRRR, just because it's updating every hour or it's just updating faster than anything else, and it's just more relevant than anything else. I think I'm using the GFS for longer range stuff, but honestly, I don't really look at any of that because for flying, the most important thing is wind and overdevelopment. And HRRR pretty much nails it on wind. Like you don't want to see it, you don't want it to be true, but it's often more accurate than anything else in terms of just the wind speed and what kind of like volume of wind we're passing through. So what I do typically is I'll put a point cast on launch. So this is the Cove launch, and I do this point cast thing, and then we can see this graph. And this graph is useful because this red line shows us how high we can get in the lift. We also have the time stamps on the bottom here too, so you can start to see what time of day it's going to turn on. And at the bottom here we have this is thermal strength. So this white color, very difficult to get off the ground, like it's gusty. Like you really have to pick your moments with this white color. When this is existing, you have 4 to 5 meters a second just out there. And this is saying it's starting at about 11,000 feet. So this is tomorrow. This is Tuesday on Cove. And so we look at thermal lift. Yeah, it's working. This dip could be shade. It could be overdevelopment. It's a bit of clouds. So this cloud layer shows you kind of where the clouds are, what time they show up, and a little bit how thick they are. Over here, you can look at the density or the width of the, like today, our thunderstorm over Monroe. You can see this showed up. We had thick clouds that were 5,000 feet thick, and it was enough moisture that it fell out. The wind is quite useful. Anything in the green is flyable. The middle green is 22 miles an hour. I guess it's flyable. It's not. It gets less and less comfortable, right? But this graph shows you on Cove launch what the wind is doing in the direction, which is all important. So like on Tuesday tomorrow, if there wasn't a fire going on and you were super motivated, you could soar this southwest bowl up to you could soar it between 8 and 11 a.m. up to about 10,000 feet. So you can't really soar that high, but if you were super motivated, you could have about an hour flight in this bowl right here. So if I were to get another sample of the air mass at the landing zone, do a point cast for that. Now this elevation on the graph is 6,000 feet, and we can see that in the valley it doesn't get windy until like 11:30, 12, and that green wind starts to descend and starts to fill up the entire valley up to 12,000. So this is kind of how you get like a feel for the day. When I'm looking at flyable moments or windows, I'm looking at this morning setup, and I like, when we fly in the morning, especially off Monroe Peak, go over here to Monroe Peak, and I drop a pin. Our weather station survived, and Lisa Weiss is saying the National Weather Service is using our station to help. It's the only wind indicator they have up there. But yeah, Barry out of Bishop, California, just created this whole thing. He put the little circuit together, soldered it all, made it all work with a radio frequency, so it transmits to my house. I don't have that station at the moment, but it's yeah, quite useful. So we combine what we're seeing at the weather stations. I'll get that up. See. I don't usually use this computer. But yeah, we have these weather stations so that we can look at what the HRRR is saying and what's actually happening. So we have this on Monroe Peak. Interestingly enough, show details here. It'll show the battery level, external temperature, case temperature, and the charge. So when the fire first started, it went up that Monroe Canyon up to the peak immediately, basically within an hour and a half. But they had these big airliners dropping retardant all around the radio towers, so it saved it. But our if we go back in time, the external temperature went up to, and I asked Barry about it, he looked into it deeper. It went up to 200 degrees for about like a few minutes, and then
Wow.
it dropped down. So the fire did definitely move through there. Um, so yeah, this is an amazing site. And on our Kawasa website, I redid the weather page, and that gives a good overview and links and stuff like that that you can use locally. So I mean, practically for you guys during the race, when you're coming in, like part of your prep would be to spend 10 minutes like looking at the day, what time it's turning on, and this website is awesome because we have Cove Launch at that altitude, or we have the LZ, we have Cove Launch, and every 4 seconds we're getting a direction, a data point, and averaging and all that stuff. So it's just a game changer for us. Before we had these, we were getting a reading once an hour off of a NOAA station that transmitted to a satellite once an hour, and so that feels like the Stone Ages at that point. But
Are you,
another thing
Jonathan, are
I
you
wanted,
using the Richfield loop as well, out of the airport?
not really,
Okay. I was using that a
because
lot during the World Cup that one day when we had, when we had the gust fronts coming through, just to get real time data on the ground because
yeah,
you weren't
on
getting the
that
delays.
on that Kawasa website, on the weather links page, there's a NOAA station that has all the NOAA stations in Utah, and it's kind of zoomed in on our area. And you can see other weather stations in the area for sure, but nothing's updating every 4 seconds
Right.
like ours. So one thing I wanted to show was the XC potential, and I think this could be improved like eventually, but it's pretty good at showing timing. So like Tuesday, like today, if we looked at today, like 6 o'clock in the morning, sun's coming up, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we start to see like a little bit of thermal activity in these little places. So the red color, ironically, is like good to go. It's likely good. And at 10 o'clock, we can see the east faces on the Pavance are starting to warm up enough that there's actually like thermal activity. And then 11 o'clock, we have this. We had shade, we had cloud cover over all of this today. So the HRRR is so good. It's picking up shadows in the valley floor in the evening. So like often all this is shadows or it's dropping out. So it's not a great XC day, but if you were in the air here, you could stay up and move along here. So 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So these are basically the colors are where and when you'll be able to stay aloft. So if we looked at tomorrow, like the heat of the day, 3 o'clock, blue is flyable. We've done it. We did a whole task last year on blue, and it's definitely doable, especially when you have other people around. Um, but it's windy enough that some of the layers are blown apart. So when you can get up to a certain layer and you can't find it anymore or something like that. Um, yeah, so that's what I'm using to kind of predict the timing on like when to be on launch. And usually this hour thing, it could be 2, it could be 2:30, it could be 3, but I'm also coordinating that with the point cast, and I'm sampling like what's happening at the top of the tushers, using this point cast and wind to really see like what kind of day it is. Like tomorrow it's just raging wind, and this is what they're worried about with the fire is the strong southwest wind, and especially if it's super dry. So that's XC skies, and I don't know if I can get windy to show up. The free version of windy is super cool for the long range. And the way I use this is looking at, it's also really good for the satellite view because you kind of get the last hour from a satellite perspective. So you can see what clouds are growing where and how like just like how much energy is are are within these things. I don't know if this is. I'm supposed to have Google Fiber where I'm working, but this is taking a while to load. So satellite's good to see, like, just in the nearby area, what, like, where the explosive convection is. And I don't know if we're going to be able to see anything. Yeah, there it goes. So yeah, we'll be able to see. So Manti Junction, Ridgefield. So you can see the general movement of the atmosphere and what's blowing up. This is what we use when we determine if we're upwind or downwind of convection. So sometimes, if it's predicted to be northwest, it's often met with the west or the southwest wind, and we have these huge areas of lift that I talked about, these convergence areas, and we can be just on the dry side of dropout. And what I looked for dropouts is HRRR has a surface gust. The green is like no go, but what's important is that you can see it hour by hour progression about how the gust front spreads. So, like, if there was a thunderstorm over the Tushers, an actual thunderstorm, you'd see blue everywhere. So this is a surface gust. So blue everywhere, and then when the thunderstorm drops out, you'll see this green going in all directions. Like the wind barbs are actually, and then when you go hour by hour, you'll see that green propagate, and you can often see like how big, how far the gust can propagate. There was one year, maybe it was 2016 and 17. Arash learned the year before I did, but he was trying to send it constantly and coming down to Monroe all the time. But one time he was flying around the V and made it over City Creek, and we were running the river and the Sevier River, and there was a thunderstorm, and we couldn't even get on the river. It was unreal. The rain was unreal. That gust front ended up propagating all the way to Salt Lake, and he got pinned in the avenues, like surrounded by city, and like he had nowhere to go. So, this is like a 200-mile gust front. So had we known what to look for, we would have been able to see that. And the HRRR is just so good right now that it'll show you timing of when the gust front falls and how far it propagates. The other thing, the precip thing is like when you see green, it's not really any precip tomorrow, but maybe this afternoon. Yeah, so precip is where you can likely see it drop out. That doesn't mean it's going to hit the ground, but it does mean you're going to see virga. And then you combine this with the surface gust reading, you can start to see that this green area going through the valley right here in this direction is a gust front.
Jonathan,
see it propagate. Yeah.
Are you using one of the two tools that I use? One on XC Skies and one just in the discussion are CAPE and just the discussion on that. Are those two things that you're looking at as well?
I have been familiar with CAPE, but I forget to look at it because when you look at XC potential, it gathers all of that. Or it gathers a lot of those it indexes a lot of those different factors or elements.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, and then if you're looking at the surface gusts, I mean, it's all kind of one product in the end.
Oh,
And
related.
oftentimes you can see on the point cast, here's a gust front. Here's one. So this is at 5 o'clock today, Monroe. So it must have dropped out somewhere here, and this is a propagating gust front. So if you do a point cast in the valley, because that's what's the most dangerous thing is getting into a gust front with flying at this altitude at this part of the country with these mountains and these conditions, you just yeah. So right here is I can't really. I'm afraid to zoom in on my computer, but basically, you see how you see how the lift is gone. So literally, it's dropped out, and then you can see this green wind on the ground right here at 5 o'clock. So that's a wall of wind that's, let's see, 6,000 to 9,000 feet. So like 3,000 foot deep wall of wind that's propagating down the valley. So what happens? Like what happens if you get in that, right? Like it's kind of
Don't.
okay, but you start thinking you're kind of invincible. It's all positioning. Like there's no lift here that would have been useful, I don't think. But had you been like at 16,000 feet, like in this area, and you see this dropping behind you, could you run away from it? You could run away from it, but if that type of dropout's happening, it's probably happening like over the Wasatch Plateau, other any over anywhere else where those conditions are met, where it's wet and there's a ton of lift and it gets cold and it drops down. So we used to think we'd like, yeah, we've become a lot more conservative with it. Probably sometimes too conservative because you get away with it sometimes. But there was a day in early August, early in my flying, where we were on Cove launch and it felt perfect from the north, but it was dropping out. It was dropping out in this area north of Richfield. It was dropping out over here. It was dropping out over Marysville Peak and behind us over Kusharam. It was dropping out over the Fish Lake. It was dropping out over the Tushers. And for some reason, we're staring at this monster cloud just emptying everything here. And we took off and we had like beautiful, clean soaring. And then all of a sudden, we were going up and there was nothing we can do to come down. There were two other guys with me. Yeah, anyway. So we survived it, but that's where I got to appreciate how it's thousands and thousands of feet thick. And so we had a gust front meeting another gust front, and those two gust fronts converged and ended up falling out later on. So this, like, the instability lasted like after dark. And one dude we were with was literally like in and out of clouds, hailed on, like had an experience for an hour and a half, 2 hours. He landed right after dark in the valley. But that was the scariest. Like when before that I was like, oh, I got this. We can just always fly downwind. But sometimes you fly downwind into another gust front, and it's just So yeah, I mean, I could talk forever about that, but that's really what we're looking at is the for OD potential and the So here's cloud cover. And you can see that kind of like hour by hour, and just see how it changes. But yeah, as long as we're getting moisture over. So if we look at the long term, this is one way to look at the long term is with the GFS, is that we can see like, okay, it's mostly wind. It's not too windy here Wednesday and Thursday. That's when the fly-in is actually. So we're going to be able to fly in the morning for sure this coming week. You can check out clouds. So there's really aren't a lot of clouds happening. I wanted to say I wanted to just say the best way I've found to look at the big picture for the coming week, and windy, it kind of tempts you because you can look at way out, like almost 2 weeks out. But a great way to look at it for me is to watch the clouds, is to just play like what's happening this coming week. And we really want to see this moisture working its way right here, but it's being like pressed down on by this I guess it's a low circling here. But just looking at the clouds like as the day progresses, afternoon thunderstorms, And on your phone, it's really easy. You can just go to every afternoon and kind of see what it looks like. I don't know if we have the patience to look at it, but there's just cloud cover, and it's just an amazing way to look like deep into the future. And then
Are
again, it
you,
can change too. But
Jonathan, on Windy, are you almost always using the ECMWF
yeah,
model?
I just use that one.
Yeah.
I just think
Okay.
XC Skies models the HRRR so well that
Yeah.
that's just what I've used.
What about,
I am checking this for. Go ahead.
are you using SkySight as well?
No, I
Okay.
could probably expand the glider pilots are all using SkySight.
Well,
So yeah,
you
there's
mentioned,
no it's super dry. So this is where we're worried about like. So the other thing I want to say was you could look at relative humidity. Um, it's a filter at some point, but you'll be able to see like blobs of moisture moving in. There was one year where we had the Xredrocks where we had a hurricane remnant from Baja that just puked up all this moisture, and we were overdeveloping in September. So yeah, September is kind of a unique time because there's the potential for OD, but there's also a potential for an actual front and like almost like a um, like a front system where you know 3 or 4 days of southwest wind, and then the front comes through, and then we have north and northwest and north wind, and then we'll end up having a northeast wind as the low passes through, or as the high like exits, something like that. Anyway, the mixture of the two. But I look at the wind direction when I'm looking at in the future, like southwest wind. When the southwest wind starts, it usually builds and builds and builds until we get the front. The monsoon period right now is basically like southwest wind and west wind, and we're just hoping we're bringing enough moisture in that we're getting moisture right now. So yeah, we love west, we love north, any kind of north, because we know in the evening it's going to trend down. Often when it's a south day or southwest day, um, we don't get that evening kind of chilling out type of flying.
is that when it's south or, yeah, south or southwest, is that complicate things through the, Poverty Flats pinch, like coming through the Venturi?
Yeah, yeah. One thing we've noticed, we have a weather station. This is our Poverty Flats, our Poverty launch, and we have a weather station right here. This is a Venturi between the two valleys, the two severe valleys here. This one and this one. This one's about, I don't know what it is. It could be close to I don't know, maybe let's say 600 feet higher than this one. But what we've noticed on our weather station in the mornings is that we have a really strong wind, like often 20 miles an hour. We're measuring on our weather station that's super solid south. So it's kind of like the south side at the point of the mountain. That there are some potential spots over here, but every morning there's a south wind almost, at least in this time of year. Um, but yeah,
This, Jonathan, this bridge here has confused me over the years.
me
I've
too.
like
Yeah,
flying Edna to Monroe. We had that challenge task last year. And it wasn't really that straightforward. It was a good day.
yeah,
And the people that stayed on the Tushers in the in the Adventure and the Pro, and they crossed the 70, but they stayed on the west side all the way up. And then for the most part, made it in. And those, but that didn't make much sense for the challenge because you're going way off course line. You're going way around.
yeah.
And it
Well, I can
seems
tell you,
like later in the day you could just cross down at like, South America, not use the bridge, just go over to the west facing uh terrain and work your way north. But it's weird. I've been in that bridge and it's worked great. And I've been in that bridge and it's been really hard to piece together on days that it wasn't that windy. just wondering.
What I can say about that is that it's definitely been done this way. This is the most
Yeah.
popular way
Okay.
because you're hitting this spot, which is a one of the first thermals of the day. This crossing, you get up to like 14, 15, 16,000 feet off of Edna here or out in front of Edna, and you feel like I have no problems crossing right here.
Yep.
And it can definitely work, and it has worked. The issue often is that the valley, there's still like a residual cold pool. And if you were
Mm,
to hour by hour look at the lift above ground, um, on, I mean, you'd be able to see it. So like hour by hour, you looked at the lift above ground in the valley, you'll be able to see this residual cold pool. And it may be that oftentimes we're too early crossing it. Uh,
mm,
but
interesting.
if there are
Okay.
clouds, there's no problem. But like 14, 15, and when you're up that high, you often also have, you're into the west wind enough that you have a tailwind across. And for sure, you're getting lift over here. But oftentimes you end up in these foothills.
Yeah.
Either it's wind, it's a combo. It's a combo because it's still windy, possibly, or it's just the residual cold pool and it hasn't pumped off yet, or these are pumping so much that it has to draw from this from the
Mm,
river air, that air has to be replaced from somewhere. So it just is, the thermals are going up, but there could be more horizontal, and we don't have the patience for it, and we end up landing here.
well, hey, let's wicked, dude. There's a lot of information. Really, that's really good. Before we go, I'd love to just open it for a few minutes to Q&A, just to give people a chance to ask you some questions. I was just going to say about SkySight. I'm kind of a newbie with SkySight. It's something I've been trying to use more and more the last couple of years, mostly because with the gliders, I've learned what it is really good at is convergence. And you
Right.
mentioned that you've got these convergence theories kind of coming together. And we're really trying to figure that out up here in Idaho because we can see them. We know there's these wicked convergence lines. And I will say that SkySight's pretty good at picking those up. And you've got that overlay. I've actually learned this flying in some World Cups lately that you've got that overlay on the Navitor app, or on your UDI if you have it connected to Wi-Fi, or if you've got a SIM card in it or something. And there's been days where I've just been desperate, like for an idea, and I'll just fly to the yellow, which is convergence on those, and it works. It's kind of crazy. So I'd be interested to see if you start playing around with that, what you find. I'm not finding XC Skies has a very good model of convergence. I think maybe there's a way to see it on there. I haven't
The
been
way
able
to
to
see it
figure it
is
out.
to see conservative top of lift, which is what I use because that's just seems to be where we get to. And if you just look at the map hour by hour,
Oh, okay.
and you'll
You can
see
see
you'll
the,
see and you'll see it move up and down the valley, and you'll see when it forms. That's the same. So you can see it that way.
okay,
That's
cool,
how we see it.
cool. Well, all you listening in, if you've got a question, just take your mic off and go for it. Thanks, Jonathan. That was wicked, man. Appreciate it.
Got a question. I guess kind of looking at the forecast for mid-July is one thing, but I guess kind of looking at it compared to mid to late September, I guess what are kind of the high level, kind of notable differences to be kind of thinking about?
Yeah, good question, Jeremy. Like I said, you get more, or it's basically the direction of the wind. So typically in September, when we start to see a southwest wind arrive, it's only building, building, building until we get the front moving through. So the south wind can kind of, in the bigger picture, it can get stalled where we kind of just have like a lighter southwest wind, but that takes the high pressure system over New Mexico or the Four Corners or something to kind of be stalled in this thing. But the tendency is for them to move to the east, and yeah, so we're much more aware of, and usually when the wind starts, it could last 3 days, it can last 4 days, day and night, 30-mile-an-hour winds, and then all of a sudden it's north, and it's like the wave moves through, and then it's a completely new zone, and we get 4 or 5 good days after that. But yeah, There is some OD potential. The daylight is there's less daylight, of course, so it starts a little bit later and it ends a little bit earlier. And the heat of the day is a lot less. There's like 2 or 3 hours or something instead of like 4 or 5 hours today or this time of year. Gust fronts can still be super wicked even though it's cold. We can still have that happening. But yeah, that's the other thing. When there is any kind of north wind in the fall, it is super mega cold at altitude. And that altitude could be 12,000, it can be 13, 14, 15. I mean, even now, like being up above 15, 16,000 feet, it's cold. So yeah, I think being warm is a thing, and it's always something in the like when cold is a factor. It's either your hands, it's your forehead, it's your face underneath your goggles or your glasses. It's your feet. There's one thing that's going to be like the thing that gets you. So I would say that would be the big thing is being prepared for that. So any north wind, I would be real wary of being cold. So carry hand warmers with you. The other trick with hand warmers is that we start them like a couple hours before because they last 10 hours. So if they're already cold and you're trying to get them going in the air, they don't get warm enough to make a difference all the time.
Hmm. Jonathan, the weather we had last year, for 4 days, it was just insane. So good. How unusual was that? I mean, that was the first time we'd seen it in the Xredrocks being that good in 4 years, but was that pretty unusual, or you've seen Septembers like that?
I've seen Septembers like that. I've seen
Cool.
all of them. We
Yeah.
started the Red Rocks fly in one year, like it snowed the day before. It snowed on lunch, which was actually good because then we had a north wind for a while. The north wind is typically drier, so we're not getting OD, and we can get a lot higher. I feel like too.
Hmm.
But yeah, September's tricky, and the trick with this part of the country at this altitude is that wind is a factor. Um, so it depends a lot on the bigger picture about how deep the jet stream is and how fast it's moving and where we are in relative to that. And we could get 4 or 5 excellent days. We have like one day where it's windy and the front passes and then it's good the next day. I've seen wind blow out 3 4 days, or I've seen it come and go overnight, and we were able to fly the day before in a southwest wind, west wind, and then the next day it was a north wind, and the whole process happened in the middle of the night. It's hard to say. It's really hard, which is why I feel like the having more days available is helpful, just because you get a better chance. Because the weather's always changing for sure. It's always moving. In September, it can be. It's hard to tell in the bigger picture what's normal anymore.
Hey, can I jump in here and ask a question to you? Hey, Jonathan, it's good to see you again,
Hey,
brother.
yeah.
So with these big fires happening right now, of course, we're going to have these huge burn scars and a lot of our vegetation is going to be gone. Do you think it's going to impact the flying quality over Monroe and just the mountains in general with thermals and just overall changing in flying conditions?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't have a lot of experience with it flying over black like that, but I think it's going to be beautiful. The forest isn't like cleared; it's just like dead spears, spires in the air. So you still can't land in trees, and I don't know. It wouldn't be. I don't know. I don't have any experience with a fire this big. We knew it would happen, and I'm kind of glad it's getting it out of its system. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you about it, man. Have you flown over burn scars, Gavin? I mean, color does make a difference, so I'm sure it's a thing.
Yeah, it does. I can't say with any authority how it really changes, the strength of the thermals or the quality of the day. We've had ragers up here in the last 10 years. And so we fly over, huge burn areas. We had a big one in the White Clouds 15 years ago. So we've been kind of able to see that whole evolution. And then we had a huge one up near Stanley last year, and the Beaver Creek fire the year before, and Smiley. We fly over that stuff all the time, and so I can't say year to year whether it changes anything. What I will say about smoke is, other than it being shitty in the air to breathe, often you can kind of get above it, and it makes this really beautiful, almost kind of morning glory type effect. But we often say around here in the middle of the summer anyway that smoke can be a good thing because it can just depower things enough that it makes it pretty pleasant. It makes a mid-July rager here in Sun Valley or the Wasatch kind of thing, just more like a nice September day. It just mellows it out just enough, so that can be good, especially if you can get out of the smoke. I've had days here where we fly in pretty heavy smoke for 10 hours, and you don't notice it so much when you're in the air, but man, you notice it on the way home. It can't be good for you. So that side of it, I have a lot of experience with flying in smoke. We've done it a lot in Chelan too, and it could be like kind of apocalyptic. But um, for the most part, I find that it kind of helps things in really strong areas, the smoke. But flying over the black, I honestly I haven't noticed enough difference. I can't imagine it doesn't. But
Yeah.
especially a place like Monroe that's so treed, that has so many aspens and stuff, I would think that would it just make it a little bit stronger when it's burned out. But
The way this fire happened, and it came down big lakes of Monroe, like from 9,000 feet up, it's basically like completely charred, that whole west face. And it should make hiking easier. I mean,
hmm,
honestly, I think a lot of that sagebrush is going to be gone, and they're putting in big dozer lines along the whole west face, along Hunts Lake and down Dry Creek to Poverty. So yeah, it's a big effort. But yeah, I don't know. I think in the end, it's going to definitely help the whole area, and it won't happen again, hopefully, for a while. Anything else you guys got? Still there?
anybody else got a question for Jonathan? If not, we'll sign off here.
I guess with bringing up hiking, I guess what's sort of the, I don't know, average September temperature range on the ground to kind of expect?
I don't know. It could be 80, it could be 90, it could be 60, it could be 50.
I would say in general, it's been warmish on the ground, like at the in the Severe Valley, it'd be 70s, and could definitely get warmer than that. And you know, pretty tough work if you're down at the bottom of the valley, 2 to 4, kind of in the afternoon. And then we've had other days that are much cooler, of course, but that I would there hasn't been, I can't, yeah, Jonathan's right, not much of an average, but we've definitely had some warm days during the Xredrocks that are, when you're high, it's cold, and when you're down in the valley bottom, you're kind of cussing yourself, wishing you were in the air. So it can be pretty tricky, especially because I I think we've had one person fly with O2. It's just not really something you can deal with in hike and fly situations to carry O2. So it can be pretty hard to figure out what to wear, and how to deal with that. Those of you who are new to the race, we always allow everybody to put a handbag in my truck for the first launch. So, going up to the first launch, whether that's Cove or Monroe or Edna or whatever it is, you can carry a pretty minimal amount of water and no clothes, just whatever you've got on you. The only twist to that may be maybe you don't go to that launch and you launch somewhere else. You don't mean, but if it's a mandatory waypoint that you've got to get to on the ground, which is typically how we start the day, then we allow you to put stuff in the truck that's up at the launch with a whole bunch of extra water that you can, then from that part of the day, then we always have another resupply somewhere else, but we don't guarantee that you're going to be able to get there. From then on, you're on your own. So it makes the decision making, so you can stuff whatever you want into that bag and then take whatever you don't have to take everything that's in that bag. You can leave it in there, but it does free up some of the options because it's a non-supported race. In other words, you don't have a supporter that's helping you out. So we do that for always the first launch of the day, which makes it easier. And those of you too who are new, I see a lot of challenge names that are listening into this. We'll do a very thorough weather briefing every day. So the night before, we'll try to put something out, and we always try to put the task up. Ideally, we put all 3 tasks up before the race has even started, for 3 days, or now in this case, for 4 days. In reality, that's never happened because weather is dynamic and we always have to change things. But the goal for the task committee is to put the tasks up for all 4 days, 48 hours before we even start. And the reality is we put up one for the next day as we go along. And that can always be tweaked because weather is weather. We want to make the tasks safe as we can. But also, that will include Revis he's always raced in the past, but he's not racing this year. So it's a combination of Jonathan and Revis and whatever the weather gurus we have, will put up a pretty comprehensive weather briefing every morning. And so that will, but it's really good to have this at least basic knowledge that Jonathan just went through, because in the morning, it's kind of too late to really plan. It's just giving you a heads up. This is what we're worried about. This is what we're looking at. This is what we've factored into our decisions for making the task. But that doesn't give you a lot of time to really strategize around the day. Like he's talking about thermal start and where you want to be on launch and what aspect and that kind of thing. So, it's a really good idea to have as much weather knowledge as you can. Certainly, if you don't have much, then start working on that between now and the race. But we do a very thorough briefing on what you can expect for the day. Anybody else?
I just want to say before we go, I appreciate everyone listening, and I'm glad for the opportunity. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me as well. And yeah, feel free. I'll be around. So I appreciate you guys listening on it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yep.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll do another one soon.